another episode of the Footy Notes podcast. I'm your host, Bonisil Infameza. Please like, hype, subscribe to all the things that podcasters like to ask of followers, listeners, and whatnot. I am I'm glad I'm recording the day after, as usual. Like there's a lot of feelings when you watch games, and I'm an Arsenal fan. Those of you who know about me a little bit, Gunners over here, but I do try to take a broad scope and look at things broadly, and the consequences of what different results mean and whatnot. Today, I'm gonna jump right into I think the things that are surrounding Arsenal and this whole title talk, title race. I've been engaged in many a group chat, some with my Manchester United fans, some with my fellow Arsenal fans, and it seems the celebrations are like this way for Manchester United, like peak, and they should be happy. They've beaten a team that's worthy of celebrating a win over after beating Manchester City last week. So they're peaking. Two consecutive results against the top two teams in the league. I'm even hearing talks from some of my Manchester United fan friends um, who are very happy about the results, of course, and rightfully so. They think now United, has a chance of winning the league because they think Arsenal now will continue to do what they did over the last three games or so, and that Manchester City are useless. The life of a football fan, right? It's a beautiful, beautiful existence. The rises and falls are quite steep, depending on you know sometimes within the same game you have a steep ride, like Arsenal, scoring a 2-2 goal, thinking maybe they have the momentum to go and get a third goal, and then about a minute or two later, it's Manchester United who scores another stunning goal from Cunha. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the game, and then I'll talk a little bit about the title race and some of my thoughts around Mikel Arteta and some of my thoughts around um, Arsenal's struggles because I watch Arsenal a lot. And then I'll make time at the end to look at some of the other results. West Ham had themselves a really nice result at home against Sunderland, and there were a few others who had themselves a good weekend. Villa back to winning ways, City back to winning ways after about 5 games without a winning result in the Premier League. But the order of results matters, I guess, because now it seems like Arsenal is the team, you know, in a crisis after just losing their third game this whole season in all competitions. Anyway, so speaking of the game, Manchester United started pretty much the same group they did against Man City. And, I think it was the right call because I like the balance between experience and youth in that team. You have a lot of your experience in the back positions, the back four. Maguire next to Lisandro Martinez. They're the best centre back pairing if you're going to play a back four. And then you have Luke Shaw on the left, and then you have Dallo on the right, right? And then in front of them, you have a double pivot of Casemiro and Mainu. Mainu is younger, bit more legs. Casemiro can still have some legs after, if he runs once a week, which is the case for Man United right now. And then you have Ahmad, Bruno in the middle, Dogu on the left, with Mbeumo at the top of the front four positions. Manchester United did exactly the same thing that they did against Manchester City. Let you have the ball and pounce on you. Based on whatever triggers they had set up, and it looked like they were jumping on as soon as the ball went to Martin Odegaard, they were jumping on him, and they were jumping once the ball kind of came into central areas. And so they were happy for us to pass around between the center backs and even sometimes to the fullbacks. But they really were aggressive in occupying and protecting the middle of the pitch. A good 4-4-2 block. So they did that well. What Arsenal didn't do was to find a way to either have a target up front where you can go long into the middle of that press, and then you have a lot of second ball chasers in your midfield players and your wingers. Because we're playing with Gabriel Jesus and he was playing, solo against two center backs. He's capable of playing when he falls deep, but like when he comes deep and then it comes to into a packed midfield, it gets a bit crowded there. And so Manchester United's plan was working really well, even though Arsenal had most of the ball in that first half. And Arsenal had a really good game, so to speak, before they scored the goal. And then they scored the goal and everything changed. But both teams, I think, at that point, were not very good on the ball. Like I think Arsenal had most of the ball, but I don't remember Lamens or Lamon, whatever his name is, the keeper, having too much to do. And it's just one of those things with Arsenal at the moment where we have the ball in the places that are safest. If I'm an opponent playing against Arsenal, even though Saliba is a talent and he can pass the ball, if Saliba has the ball and Gabriel has the ball, and then Declan Rice, even, he's one of the safer passes. Those are the three of the safer passes in the team. The ball is not at Saka's feet, and the ball is not at Odegaard's feet, who only made 14 passes in this game, completed 14 passes of 21. Um, Surprisingly, didn't look um, up for it after not playing midweek. I thought rest would be good for him. It doesn't seem like it did help. I don't know if it's a psychological thing with this team, but they just seem to be struggling at the moment. So United had a good like block, and they were very vertical in the way they played. And in those early exchanges, like they did try to hit on the break, but the pass would either be loose and didn't go connect to a black shirt, and Arsenal players would run onto it. But after scoring to go 1-0 up, Arsenal never really looked secure, even before they scored the first goal. United could have had at least two other opportunities besides the one they took from Zubimendi. Because Saliba also lets the ball run through, and then sneaks in right behind him. There's one or two other opportunities that United could have had from just like loose passing from Arsenal. Um, and United were not even like consistently pressing. They were just pressing in a timely fashion. They were very judicious in when they were going to apply the press, because Arsenal players have a tendency under Mikel Arteta's tutelage to really try to invite engagement from the defender, and that ploy, I think, needs to be a little bit changed at the moment, because I think teams know that you are going to take your time, and there's so many times where Arsenal passes are blocked, almost like shots get blocked. Passes and crosses were blocked so many times in this game because Arsenal players take too long on the ball to make it move. It's almost like they're all becoming into like an Odegaard, high usage, high touch um, player type vibe. And when you are playing this kind of setup every week, I'm sorry, like I feel little sympathy when then you don't find answers, or show the opponent a different look to you. And Arsenal continues at the moment to be a team that feels safe in possession, but the possession that you have is harmless, and it's actually, if anything, more harmful if you lose the ball, because the ball is on the last two players usually. And if so, one of them loses it, United or whoever the opponent is, they have an open run at your goal. So, as much as I like us to play a high line, I don't think we're safest with the ball in the last two players that much. And I think we are asking too much of those back three, back four players in terms of David Raya, the two center backs, and Zubimendi. They have the ball way too much. Um, and I feel for Zubimendi, because he takes responsibility, in the build up, and then he runs to be one of the highest people in the final third, and he helps us get through the phases. building from the back through the different blocks of the pitch and all the way to the top. So as much as, yes, he is to blame for the mistake that leads to the equalizer, I think it could have been Saliba, it could have been someone else. It could have been anyone in that Arsenal back five, back six positions. There was one time actually where Odegaard is taking the ball in a pocket, and he tries to turn, and then somebody just munches him and the ball bounces back, and it's a counter attack going the other way. And I remember Arteta like looking really furious with it. So we were playing into traps, I think, and our passing was not crisp and sharp enough to be able to escape the trap. And sometimes you're just not on your game, and because you're playing every 3 days, and because you're just not on your day, you know what I mean? You're just off your game. It's just that the problem at the moment, I keep saying this, if you are as good as Arsenal have been over the last few years, you find yourself in a position where most teams, I was watching this game at a bar with Manchester United fans and Arsenal fans, and I said to the United fans, there's no bad result for you guys here. If you score a couple of goals and you lose in a shootout, it's a creditable result because you've come away to the league leaders and you've lost, in a shootout. And if you draw 2-2, you still win. And if you win, it's the perfect result, right? And and they got the win. But I just worry. I was worried about Arsenal at 0-0. I was worried about them at 1-0 up. I was worried about them at 2-1 down. But that four substitution sub all at once, quadruple sub, I think. So that's the right English way to say it. I I think some people are saying it was an admission of picking the wrong team for Mateta. I don't necessarily agree with that he picked the wrong team. I think I think the team he picked, I was fine seeing it. I was fine with the Jesus having done what he did, in Italy, getting a start because Gyökeres, I do think needs a break. He does need to be rotated in and out of the team. However, I do worry that between our fit strikers, who the two who are really strikers by trade or forward players by trade in Gyökeres and Jesus, don't always give us the things that Merino gives us. Merino is a target with whom the ball sticks. Gyökeres, the ball doesn't stick; it bounces off him. Jesus, the ball does stick, but he can't really be a target against two center backs, as well. He has to come away from the center backs and play more false nine type, which allows the other team to have a little bit of a break going the other way, especially when your wingers are not taking the responsibility um, to push them back and occupy central spaces, because we like to keep our wingers wide at Arsenal. I'm hearing people talk about Ateta needing to go. I'm not there. I'm not there. I think I said in the last few episodes I've done that the problem with Ateta that he has, first of all, is that he gives you a consistent level of underlying metrics. His football, if I'm going to use American terms here, his football travels. His football can go to an away stadium and get you a result. His football can be at home and get you a result. It's repeatable stuff, right? But I think because it's that repeatable, I think maybe we've gotten drunk on our own Kool-Aid, we being Arsenal. I think Arsenal have gotten drunk a little bit on their own Kool-Aid by trusting their tactical stuff a little bit too much. And I think because Arteta's approach to football, this is my opinion, okay, is so forensic and scientific almost, because he's the nerd's perfect coach, because he gives you all the underlyings, he gives you all the things, the XGs and the field tilt and all of that stuff. And more often than not, that gets you results. But in tight games, what you need is people who are game breakers. And for so long, Saka was that for Arsenal. But it seems to have escaped him for at least about a third of the season. I don't know if it's going to continue to be this way. And if it does, this will be hands down his worst season in an Arsenal shirt for production, because Saka has been a reliable source of product, right, in this attack. But it seems now that he's also been like blunted or stopped by most of the opponents that he faces, and I think we're asking too much of him. So my thing is I don't think Arteta. I think he's one of the best coaches around, first of all, and I think he will go on to win things if he continues to coach at top clubs. My worry with him is that I think he finds a way to equalize everything and maybe takes away the arrogance and the swagger. I think his team is too humble. I know we're picking nits here, but I think Arsenal as a team, they're too collectivist in the way they do. And I'm sorry that this sounds like I'm crying about it. I think this is a perfect thing in most situations, which is why it gives you results in most situations. But it's also the thing that I think gets in the way when teams are like, okay, we're not gonna play ball with you. We see what you do to these European giants when they try to play with you. So we're not gonna do that. And we also know that you need a win more than we do. So you have to force the issue, Arsenal, because we don't have to do that. And as long as you're trying to do that, you leave yourself vulnerable going the other way. And that's when they get you. That's my view. I think Arsenal are victims of Arteta's template being so successful. But because we've been doing this template now for however many years, Arteta's been at the club, 6+ years, six and a bit, right? So because of that, like other teams get to then do tactics and they see what's working. And historically, Arteta has found answers. This is the one thing I can't blame him for. Like that's why I have a hard time saying, it's gotten stale, because he finds way to make edits. But the problem he has at the moment is the next one needs to come sooner rather than later. As long as these guys don't fire, I think he may need to play two strikers for some of these games and go 3-5-2 or 4-4-2. He needs to find more centrality, and I think he needs to find a way to play Saka and Madueke in his team. I really do. It may be that for some of these games he needs to run over the midfield and just like go to two strikers and then have everybody applying pressure. He may have to mix it up. I know he loves a degree of control and he doesn't like a basketball game, but I think it's becoming more and more unavoidable that these games now is what we're going to see from teams playing Arsenal, because they know that the onus is on Arsenal. Even at their home ground, teams are doing this. Nottingham Forest, who are threatened by relegation, were given so much plaudits and so much credit for plucking out a 0-0 draw against Arsenal. And Arsenal left goals on the pitch that day. Martinelli, we can think of that. But in the United game, it was a different problem. It was not the same as the previous games against Liverpool. It was Arsenal, I think maybe feeling a bit too much pressure, like on the game, and then making some very sloppy, uncharacteristic football plays. A lot of individual errors in that performance, and unfortunately, it happened, to one of our best players of the season. And I'm not going to be out here slandering Martin Zubimendi, who's been an ever so consistent football performer for Arsenal this year and Spain. I think you have a performance like that, in the post every once in a while for any player, and it happened for him to be on the day where everybody was watching, and needing a win the most. and it's unfortunate. And I was hoping, because it was early enough in the game when that happened, I was hoping that his teammates were gonna, bail him out, like Gabriel started his own bailout act away at Bournemouth. We won that day, but like when you have the ball in those back positions as much as we do, you are bound to make some misplaced passes. Forward players make mistakes, misplaced passes all the time. Unfortunately, when you are, on the last line, you make passes that are loose, you pay the highest of prices. And Subimendi is a victim of that this weekend. I don't think it's time to panic. It's still 4 points at the top of the league. It's still Champions League at the top with Kairat. If anything, I was hoping that Arteta would give the boys a bit of a, you know, 4 day, 3 day off, go on holiday somewhere, go to Greece, go somewhere with your family. Don't think about football until Thursday, Friday, and then they come back and he goes with either the people who need minutes like Norgard and others and some academy kids. Because even if you lose to Kairat, which I doubt that they would, I think some of these boys just need to switch off from football just for a few days and just be on a beach somewhere. I think that's what Arsenal need, really. I don't think they need more tactics. I think Mikel has the most comprehensive, complex, detailed like playbook there is. And so, and these guys have been with him for a while. They know the playbook. This is not a playbook thing. This is just a refreshing, like human thing, in my opinion. In my opinion, I think this is a thing that can be fixed by internal work by these players. I think if they find a way um, to get breaks, and I think this is the longest kind of break until sometime in February. I think there's another full week without football, but Arsenal has been going, 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 going every 3 days since like October, November, whenever the last international break was. They've been going on, going, going, going. So even when they give players a day off, like Odegaard didn't even touch the field in Italy, but he traveled and he still didn't look the part against Manchester United. And I think we do have a midfield problem. We do have an overusage midfield problem. And I think Ateta has to find a way to keep these boys fresh. Maybe it's a week at a time. They don't all go on breaks, but like I think he has to find a way of like, okay, you know what? This week, Martin, go to Spain, go home. Like you're not playing. And then the following week it's Declan Rice. The following week is Odegaard. And Odegaard hasn't played a lot of football, by the way, but and maybe he doesn't get a break and he plays with the juniors against Kairat because him and Big Gabby and some of the guys who've been injured, maybe it's not a fatigue thing for them, but like Saliba has been making some mistakes recently in his reads. You know what I mean? And Saliba has played well within the same games where he's made these reads that are mistaken. Like I remember the one time I think it was against Chelsea maybe, where he plays a back pass to Raya and Raya was coming for the ball. It's there's been a few moments that I'm like, oh, to Kepa. I don't remember the keeper actually. I don't remember the game, but I remember Saliba playing a back pass that could have been an own goal in the last 3 weeks or so, and you know he needs some time to just like, and I think the Premier League pressure is so much that I think these guys need some breaks in some time in some of these games where the midweek games you just, I know we tried to go all in on the Chelsea semi-final, but then it backfired because we only left here with a slender 1 goal lead, and now we have to go again. If we really want to go through, we might have to play a full strength team again, and because they are going to be strong in that second leg, they're getting their players back. So it's a tough time to be an Arsenal fan from a point of view of like you can't I mean, you're not wrong for feeling the anger and the frustration and the anxiety or whatever that feeling is. But at the same time, the data is there for all to see that your team is not doing as bad as it feels. So, reconciling what it feels like and what it looks like, in terms of just data, um, that is going to be a journey for all of us. Sometimes people are going to lean too much into the data to rationalize everything. And sometimes people are going to lean a lot into emotion and disregard data. And I'm sure the medium is somewhere between looking at both and finding a space where you can process this. And I understand we all process football differently, but I have to find a way to not trip up over this at this moment. Like, we call players bottle jobs. I think we can't then as fans be bottling, 4 points clear at the summit with a lot of football to play in all four competitions. Of course, you're not going to win all four. And of course, you're not going to win all football matches. And yes, yes, now the draw against Nottingham Forest and the draw against Liverpool, now you're feeling it, right? Like you feel the the inability to capitalize on those weekends when City didn't win and Aston Villa didn't win, and you basically just kept serve, and then you don't win, you actually lose a game, a third game the whole season, them to win and get 2 more points back on you. So at this point, I think the team will be fine. I just hope that there is a tactical answer to some of the things we're seeing, because you can't have all of your forward players in double-digit numbers of games without a goal. Everybody in that front line has gone too long of a stretch without a goal in the Premier League, and some of them in all competitions. Like that just can't continue. I think Gyökeres hasn't scored in like 10 or so Premier League games, and I think the one goal he did score is a penalty against Everton or something like that. Like all of them have like bad numbers. Trossard is like 2 goals and assists in his last 11 or so games as well. Our top scorer in the Premier League is Trossard on 5 without any penalties, and then of course Gyökeres had some penalties in his goal scoring tally, and he's also on 5. And then the next leading goal scorer for Arsenal is own goal, 4 goals. Bukayo Saka, 4 goals. Eberechi Eze, 4 goals. Declan Rice, 4 goals. So we're doing this collectivist thing in terms of how we're getting goals. And we're putting a lot of pressure on our defensive players to stop goals from coming in and then have to score them too. I think Merino might be in 4 goals too. So like it's a collectivist thing. We don't have a Haaland, but like we do set pieces. And one of the like nuggets I kind of picked up when I was listening to post-match reactions. I know Roy Keane is doing the rounds online about the whole pressure talk, and Vieira talking about mental strength of the team. Arsene Wenger was kind of like a very instructive listen too, because he talks a lot about like the difference in the way the two teams play, and that Carrick has found something there, and that United are playing, with a bit more, way more, like maybe way more. They're playing with a degree of freedom that Arsenal aren't, and I think that degree of freedom has to come from within. Players need to be allowed to, and they need to allow themselves to take initiative, and problem solve on the pitch. The script is not always going to work, and I think at the moment there's an over reliance on the script at Arsenal. Anyway, that's my Arsenal take. I'm trying to be as balanced as I can, but it's hard not to feel down after this one. It's United. If you an Arsenal fan of my vintage, it's hard not to feel down about a Manchester United loss, whatever the ground is. Even though we haven't lost to them in about 8 years at our place. So, but it comes around at some point, right? You can't win them all. Spoke about West Ham winning 3-1 against Sunderland. They're still in the relegation zone, but now at least they've done themselves a favor, because they are, what, 5 points closer. They're 5 points below um, Nottingham Forest and Leeds, but Leeds play today, and we'll see how that game goes. I wasn't expecting a West Ham win in this game. I expected a closer game and maybe Sunderland shading it if it wasn't to be a draw, because Sunderland doesn't really have high scoring games. So I'm surprised about the scoreline and that West Ham scored 3 goals. And they've been recruiting, and fair play to them, they found a way. Tottenham went to Burnley and drew 2-2, and they were actually trailing in this game, and they had to equalize. Um, I think both times actually, and no, actually they scored first, and then they were 2-1 down, and then they equalized on the 90th minute, thanks to the captain Romero, and the game ended 2-2. Brighton and Fulham, I kind of expected a result of what happened here. I thought there would be maybe a 2-2 or a 3-2 kind of game, but it ended up being 2-1. And Brighton lost to Fulham. Fulham again, like Fulham is a team that finds a way to churn up, results. And I'm not mad at like Marco Silva's job there, and they were trailing for most of this game. I I uh, I noticed that, like, Brighton scored in the first half, like before the 30-minute mark even, through Ayari, and then Fulham had to score two late goals in the 72nd minute and in the 92nd minute from Chukwueze and Harry Wilson, who has been having himself a season, and Marco Silva's man take more points. Wolves next game, 2-0 down away at Manchester City. They went. And Manchester City, I expected Manchester City to win by more goals in this game, but fair play to Wolves. And their defensive commitment is kind of starting to show now, but yeah, it might be too far for them to get to safety this season. Liverpool lost again at Bournemouth, 3-2. Um, this game, Bournemouth was leading 2-0 at some point, and then Liverpool found a way back into it, and it was 2-2. And then Bournemouth made it 3-2 right at the death, like right at the death. Um, the Premier League is tough, man. I think a lot of people, I keep saying, like, the league is crap this year, and that's why nobody's going to catch Arsenal. I think the league is good this year, and that's why everyone is losing points, including Arsenal. And yes, Arsenal is not losing matches, but they starting to draw again. Like, last year Arsenal struggled, and they drew 14 games, and this year, you know, they've drawn 5 games in the first 23 and lost 3. But I did see a stat before the beginning of this last round of matches that there were already 18 nil-nil draws, which is 2 more than all of last year in this season's scorelines. 18 nil-nil draws. So teams are not afraid to draw a game, and teams are being very smart in the way they box, especially in away games. And if you're Arsenal, you're getting the same treatment that you get at home, even in the away game. The home team will sit and hunker down, and their fans will actually celebrate that, and, like, be behind them, and encourage them to get you on the counter attack. So, like, it's a hard league, and then Nottingham Forest goes away and beats Brentford, who's been on fire. Like, it's a very weird league. I predicted Chelsea to win at Crystal Palace, and it was a comfortable 3-1 win. Yes, there was a red card to Adam Wharton, but Chelsea was already, like, running away with the game at that point. I thought Newcastle would be able to get a result against Villa. They ended up losing 2-0. And then, yeah, I've already spoken a lot about 3-2 United win away to Arsenal. So, I mean, the Premier League is a tough league, man. Like, I don't think teams at the top can take for granted wins. Look at what happened to Liverpool again. Manchester United has a lot of talent in that team, and at the moment, the counter attack thing is working for them. At some point, it will stop working, and then we're going to start to see what Michael Carrick and his coaching staff have, as a football template. I one of the few people I know who thinks Carrick is a good coach. I really believe that he is a good coach, and there's nothing to do with the head-to-head against Arteta. Like, it's nothing to do with that for me. I took enough interest when he was coaching at Middlesbrough, and I think his team was good. His team was good, and it looked well coached, and he knows how to talk football and communicate. And he's kind of a quiet, kind of presence, but confident man. He's a clever man, like the player he was. So there's something there. I don't know if United will do the Ollie thing, like interim coach becomes permanent. Whatever it is they do, there's a coach there in Carrick, and I think he'll be a Premier League coach again if United don't keep him. I'm not saying that based on these two results against City and Arsenal, because I don't think we've even seen Michael Carrick's ideas for football in these two games. I think he's just gone back to like doing the basic things and doing them well, and picking a balanced team. And but that's also a sign of a good manager, in my opinion. Like, hey, what do I have? What ingredients do I have in the team? And how do I get the best out of this collective? And at the moment, from two games, I know it's just two games, he's been able to make that group more than the sum of its parts. They are very top heavy in United in terms of talent, but he set down some of their best talents in order to sacrifice offensive thrust for commitment using two-way players. You know, like, I noticed what he was doing with Dogo. Dogo was giving Saka a game, and Timber, because Luke Shaw does need a bit of protection at this point in his career. And sometimes he was coming back all the way with Saka, and Luke Shaw was tucking in close to the center backs, and kind of like I like that tweak. I do. And Ahmad is going to be a willing runner, another willing runner in in Burmo, and then you have, the two old but very useful dudes in Bruno and Casemiro. They're the generals in the middle there, and they help. You know, but now that they have people who can run around them, and they don't have to play next to each other and be the two sixes like it was under Amorim. I think Carrick has been smart in the way he's approached this situation, and fair play to him. And congratulations to Manchester United. I think it's not fun for me anyway anymore to laugh at them, because like the league is fun when big teams that are playing with a degree of swagger. It's fun to laugh at them. Don't get me wrong, but it's better like when some of these top teams who have big investments are playing football that you enjoy to watch. And long may it continue. And let's see where it ends up. But I'm not gonna lose my poop just yet over Arsenal and whatever. It's a tough spell. Hopefully, we find answers. Only time will tell. And I'm gonna stop there, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Cheers.